get this piece off here, and what I finally did, because I was sick of turning it all by hand all the way upside down and all, which makes me all the more glad I didn't break the bolts off. I just put the air wrench on its lowest setting, and I'd run her down, spray some lube on it, run her up. I did that about 4 or 5 times, and that's a hell of a lot easier than doing that by hand. And I got all these bolts out, and we were successful. We did not break one, and it's just as I suspected. It's got studs, nuts welded to the frame on the inside, and this portion of this bolt was above that nut, so somewhat exposed to the elements, even though it was inside a boxed in frame. But you can see here, if I get it in the light, you know, how deteriorated those threads are. Where the nut actually is, though, when it's on the nut, that's not bad. So totally reusable. We'll put anti-seize compound on them, so if anybody ever has to take them out again, they'll be able to. So I finally got the part out, and there's the other half of it. And let's measure it to see if it's the same size as the new part. It looks like it is. It looks like it's the same size. And look how that part, the original part, broke and failed. Metal fatigue. So that is really something. Now all we have to do is we have to get the other half of that trailing arm off of this bracket, and shouldn't be too bad. We'll do a few things to clean up that bolt there so it spins off easier. Because we don't want to break that one, because even though it wouldn't be the end of the world if we broke it, but we would then have to go to town and buy one. So you people that live down south probably don't even know what this crap is here. That's called rust, the bane of our existence. Look at that. You gotta wonder how much the integrity of the part is compromised when there's that much rust in it, don't you? And then you might think, well, should we worry about it? And you gotta consider half the cars on the road are like this or worse. But look at that rust there, huh? Look at that. It almost makes you wonder if you should do something about that, doesn't it? Probably say, quit pounding on it, you're just making it worse. But that rust is not adding to the strength at all, trust me. So now you get to the point where you're going to be asking yourself, should we spend the time to fix it? Should we try and weld up that rust hole? Reinforce it? Obviously it breaks that easy. It's just gonna melt away when you weld on it. It's a typical thing where a job gets more difficult than you originally anticipated, huh? There is enough extra threads on that bolt where we could cut out a piece of steel and weld it in and hope for there's nothing meat left there to weld something on. On the other hand, if you weld a piece of metal over here, it's just going to create an area for crud to get in and start rusting. Metal really rusts good when it's one layer over another. You see how that is, when that was new, that was all one piece, just flat right on it. But it rusted and starts to layer and pushes things apart. Rust is some really damaging stuff. Should I look online and see if I can get a new one of these parts? I bet this part here is a lot harder to come by than this part here. But that part there gets replaced a lot more than this one. Good question, huh? Good question. We'll have to think about that. In the meantime, I'm going to get that one bolt there cleaned off enough so I can take it off. Here we're a lot more free to do what we want, because we can heat, we can do anything we want. I'm going to try just cleaning up with a wire brush on a drill, spraying some penetrating fluid on it and seeing if it comes off. Okay, you can pause.
Go.
Okay, so what we're going to do here, since we can take this part off and work on it wherever we want, I'm going to use the torch to heat up this nut so we can take it off. And I was hoping that I could hold it by that bolt so I didn't have to put a wrench on the bottom of it. So put that there, and then we will fire up the torch near a whole bunch of flammable stuff. And if we're lucky, something will start on fire, you know, teach you guys not to use a torch near flammable things. So, let me get a wrench that'll fit that too, so I'm be ready to rock here. I hate it when that happens. 18 feels a little bit loose. I think the size on this one is 17 millimeter pound-on. Let's see. Yeah, 17 millimeter pound-on. Okay, I'm gonna take that off. If I can get it off. Maybe we should have gone with 18 millimeter instead of 17 millimeter pound-on. There she goes. But when it's really close to a particular size and it's tight, chances are you're going to strip it if you use the larger size. So, alright. Now let me put on my goggles and torch. This is a big advantage, sports fans. Probably one of the first tools that you want to buy. Probably want to get a striker that actually works, so I got other ones. There we go. Now this torch really needs to be cleaned out, because when you do it the proper setting and turn on your oxygen, you'll blow out the flame. See, like that? So I got a trick. This is my trick. It's probably not recommended. Probably a whole bunch of people say you shouldn't do that. But I always do when I'm too lazy to clean the torch tip. I have putting less acetylene than you really should be using. Turn on my oxygen, and then kind of guess where the acetylene should have been. And there we go. That'll do the job. And we're not cutting here, we're just heating anyway. But that way you can get your torch going when you're too lazy to clean the tip, and you can't set it properly. That'll get you going. And this is the only thing we're going to use the torch for today. So I just too lazy to clean the torch tip. Trying to heat up the nut here more than the bolt. We don't want to twist the bolts off. Let's see, if we welded that up, we welded a new piece of metal on there, that ought to last 2 years, maybe 3. That's all you need out of the car, ain't it? But our part is only 30 bucks, which isn't too bad. If the part was $300, there'd be no question. You smell the stink of that bushing? See, there's a rubber bushing in there. That's why it smokes and stinks so bad. So you can even hear the rubber sizzling and roasting. So we'll hope that we got her tight enough, or I mean hot enough to get this off. Because we really, at this point, we heat it anymore, we're just going to be smoking up the place. And yes, that size is 17 millimeter pound on, so we'll have to pound her on. Actually, if we were getting this new part, we wouldn't even have to take this bolt out, would we? We wouldn't even have to take this out. There she comes. Hot right. I love that sound of a squeaky nut coming off because you heated it up. It's complaining because it thought it had you licked. It didn't know you had the torch in your arsenal. I just love defeating rust. One of my favorite sounds is the sound of a squeaky nut coming off a heated up bolt. Okay, so now that's hot, so we're not going to touch it right now. We'll probably pause here for a moment and come back as we decide whether we want to fix that part or just order a new one. Good. All right, sports fans, when we left you last time on this project, we were debating about whether I should fix this part or buy a new one. And well, this is kind of what decided it. I'm kind of cheap. I'm the kind of guy where if I got in an accident and, you know, hit an oak tree or something like that, and the paramedics are there trying to rip open the car with the jaws of life, I'd be going, wait, what do you guys charge? So I got cheap and I just welded it up. And what I did is I cut out a template. I cut out a whole pretty nice square shape. Cut out a template using this paper, transferred it to some steel. I cut a hunk of steel out of this piece of angle iron here, and you can just kind of imagine how that's what that is. And this is fairly thin steel, you know, it's thinner by rust and all that. So we're not perfect here. We got some slag inclusions, but I guarantee if you saw this, the video before this on this particular project, it's much better and much stronger than it was. When you're welding up some really thin, cruddy old metal, you look at this side of it, you look how unpretty that is. I just welded on the back but you know, your first weld isn't going to be very pretty. It's going to look something like that. But I just did that so I could transfer heat, because otherwise you'll just melt right through. Well, if you get the metal somewhat joined, then you can run a decent bead over the top, or grind it down and then run a decent bead over the top. The heat will transfer out into both sides of metal and it'll just burn away the mating edge. So it's not perfect, but it's certainly better than what it was. And you might think, well, maybe you should have replaced it. Yeah, but you got to consider the whole rest of the car is like this. So if we're not confident in this part in terms of rust, we can't even really be confident in the entire car, can we? So she's going back on, and we'll have this back together in a matter of minutes. I'm going to get some anti-seize compound, and we'll run the bolts in, and we'll call this job done. Now, considering half of that part that we removed here is now on the floor in that condition, you know, you do have to be considering, you know, that rust is going to continue its war against you. So with bolts and fasteners, if I think there's even a chance that I might have to remove them again, or anybody else might have to remove them again, I always cover them up with plenty of anti-seize compound. And boy howdy, it has helped me out quite a few times. I'll probably never have to take this part off again. I'm sure that part, even with our repair on it, quick and dirty as it was, will outlast the vehicle. So, and you got to assume the other side is very similar to what this side looked like before we started repairing it. Okay, that's 3 bolts. Where's bolt number 4? Ah, here we go. Now, a real smart guy might have cleaned these up with a wire wheel before he did this. Not a bad idea. It'll make it thread in easier doing that. And but on the other hand, they came through a nut, you know, kind of like almost like chasing the threads with a die, you know, going through a nut. By the way, if you ever do have a situation where you have a kind of a cruddy old bolt, and you don't have a set of dies or thread chasers or what have you, just using a regular old nut will help quite a bit. So let's see if we can get this sucker in here. Put that in like that. This is going to have to go in like this. And if we can get a bolt started, that'll be a good deal. Okay, that started at least enough to hold it on. Not totally confident in the threads being not being cross-threaded, but we'll get her held up there, and I think that'll give us a good starting point. Probably. And this is the only, I have to have this bar on. You can't, there isn't going to be any putting the bar on later, because the bolt that holds it up is hidden by the fact that it goes in that pocket. So we have no choice but to do it this way. Might be a little easier if that trailing arm wasn't on it right now. Because that way it wouldn't be binding on that, but we have no choice. Now, for my next step, I have to get myself a 1/2-inch ratchet handle. And I know that's not in this area, so give me 1 second, I'll be right back. Now, on something like this, just be a little careful when you're starting these bolts. Your main thing that you're going to be concerned about here is having these threaded squarely, because you do not want to cross thread them, because then you'll be in not quite as bad a shape as if you broke them off, but it's just not a good position to be in, especially when 9 out of 10 times or more you could avoid it just by being careful. You're going to take your time. Fortunately, these OEM automotive bolts have that tapered end with no threads on them that help you get them started. See, that one there doesn't want to start. See that tapered end? It comes to a point there. That really hastens starting the threads. And with our kind of rusted down bolts and rusty threads, it might even be easier to start. Let's see. Well, I'll just use these other bolts to kind of draw this up and line this up a little bit. Could use an impact here, but I think I'll do it by hand. We're on the home stretch now. I don't want to have anything bad to happen now. Threads are biting. That's working really good. Okay, before we get too carried away on that, I think we'll put in the bolt on the bottom side or the back side of this trailing bar. And just to be really careful, we kept track of our parts, namely our bolts and our nuts, kept them just right on the floor where anybody can kick them for about 2 weeks. But there it is. The same wrench it came off of in the last video. As I recall, that was 11/16 pound on, wasn't it? There it is, 11/16. So, that's probably not what it was when it left the factory, but that's what it is now. So now we'll put a little bit of anti-seize compound on this bolt here, in case anybody ever needs to take it apart again, which I sincerely doubt if they will. This is a 120,000 mile, 18-year-old car. And yeah, it's old enough to vote. So I doubt if it's going to ever need this part replaced again. Now, this is not going through that hole because it's not perfectly lined up. The easiest way to make that happen is to get a tapered punch and get a tapered punch and stick her in the hole and line her up. Anytime you're trying to make a hole line up so you can get a bolt through, this is almost always the best way to do it. That one's too big for right now. See, there, that gets us close. That'll get us closer. And I know we're real close now. There's not enough room. If this was wide out in the open, you could just stick your punch in through the other side, but there's the backing plate for the brakes is in the way. So we're just gonna have to fight with it. Now let's see what size it is. Is it 17? No, it's 15. The other side's 17, I believe. So, probably have to put a little bit of pressure on this and pound her through. Let me just move this light here. It's roasting my back and I can't see anything. Nope, that's all the cord I got. We got no more, that's all we got. Okay. So, ratchet handle. And you normally don't want to pound these things in. You can give them a little bit of pound. You don't, you know, you can probably guess about where you're going to start hurting the threads. But that's where we're at right now. We have to move this one way or another to get this thing in. And I don't know which way that will be. So, what I'm going to have to do is get my flashlight and take a look and see if I can see anything. Okay, that makes it a little more obvious. This has to go back a little bit. There. That's pretty close. Now, will I be able to get her to thread in though? Oh yeah, we're getting there. I think it might be close enough to get her to threading. There she goes.
we'll put on our nut, which is already on our wrench. Probably pretty tight. Let's see if I can get a start on her. If not, we will have to take the nut off the wrench. Which is probably what we'll have to do. This is not the recommended way to do it anyway, so it's just that I didn't have a hammer to knock it out. Let's see, I still got to get that nut out of there. There we go. All right. There we go. What's going on? Once again, just like taking it off, we're working with less than ideal circumstances here. Normally you will turn a nut and hold a bolt, but circumstances being what they are, we have to hold the nut and turn the bolt. So you do have all of the resistance of that bolt. And once again, I don't have a hammer handy with me, and this is 11/16 pound on. So we'll pound around into the... There we go. And see, the disadvantage of turning the bolt rather than the nut, if you were to torque it, there's no way you could come up with a proper torque level because you got the resistance of the bolt going through that shaft. So you only got one thing left to do, and that's not worry that much about torque. I think the torque setting on this is real tight. That's what we're going with. It's really tight. Now that I'm looking at this car here, I see a pretty rusty, crusty brake line there. How much you want to bet next year we're replacing that? There we go. And now all I got to do is tighten up these 4 bolts here. And once I get those tightened up, I'm going to get that 6-inch extension so I don't have to skin up my knuckles. Maybe a 3-inch will do, if I see it first. Okay. So what I got left is tightening up the 4 bolts that hold on this bracket. And with that, this project will be done. I do not believe I have to show you folks how to put a tire on. You've seen that before. And you'll see it again. So while I'm cranking these things down, I would like to ask you folks that if you enjoyed what you saw, thought it was useful, please like, share, and subscribe. If you think I could have done anything better, put her down in the comments. And I guess what I'll do now is say so long and see you next time. Thank you.